So welcome to part 3 of Courage to Create a Career Where You Thrive. And in this part, the final part, we are going to step up. So we're going to move to action. So we've been doing quite a lot of reflecting over the past 2 sessions. So we've opened up, we've shown up, and today we are going to step up. We're going to start to take action. So again, starting with that quote, courage starts with showing up and letting ourselves be seen. So this is the bit where we be seen could be speaking up, it could be stepping out into the limelight, it could be being seen for ourselves. It doesn't have to be something sort of externally courageous in that sort of way. Sorry, my doorbell has just gone and I'm really hoping that my son will get the door. I'm really sorry. I'm going to stop the recording because I'm not hearing movement from my son. Sorry. Oh no, I've had movement. Great. Sorry. The joys of doing this from home. Great. Okay, so these are the 3 steps. So number 1, we've looked at how we can open up to our fears and our limiting stories, and actually change that to be limiting assumptions. Then we've shown up, so we've interrogated that limiting assumption, and we've started to get curious. And then today we are going to step up, and part of that is around taking value-led action. Part of that will be about setting really clear boundaries for yourself. And part of that, as I've said, will be about thinking about when and how you want to be seen. So in Show Up, we covered these questions. So we looked at, we uncovered our limiting stories, the myths about success. And then we looked at a challenge that we wanted to step into or take in our life right now. And to say these questions, anytime you face that feeling of fear, of anxiety, of self-doubt, these are the questions that you can work through. They're designed for you to just work through again and again and again. So doing this once isn't going to sort of solve the world's problems, but this is a tool that you now have in your toolkit to reflect on. So often we feel that fear and anxiety because there is a challenging step that we want to take, or we are in the middle of taking in our life. And so clarifying that step or the goal is really important first step. And then we want to uncover what might you be assuming that is stopping you. So this is the process. We uncover as many limiting assumptions as we possibly can. And then we try to identify what we are most assuming that is stopping us from taking that challenging step. And I suppose the alternative to not answering these questions is to either sit with these uncomfortable feelings, which is what we did in the first step in Open Up, but it's to sit with them and try to suppress them is probably what we're doing most of the time. I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling unsure, I don't want to speak up, I don't want to apply for that job, and so I will try to cover that and compound the emotions. And that is what will be keeping you stuck. So then we look for what we're most assuming, and you might need to iterate this. You might think, oh, this is what I'm most assuming, and then it doesn't quite seem right, and you can just keep going. And then we challenge it. Do you think it is true that I'm not able to speak in meetings? Or do you think it's true that I wouldn't be really great on a podcast? Or do you think it's true that I'm not able to earn money or a significant amount of money, or have a great job, or whatever it might be? And it's at that point that we start to challenge those limiting assumptions by finding an alternative truth. So really playing the detective, can we find evidence to show that it is not true, that X might happen. And it might be that you might look at external evidence. You might look at someone who has achieved great things in their career without a degree or a PhD. You might sort of source that information from elsewhere to reinforce that evidence that it is not necessarily true. So that's where we got to. And so the question that we want to ask now is, we want to create what Nancy Kline calls a liberating alternative assumption. So what could you credibly assume instead in order to achieve your goal? What could you credibly assume instead in order to achieve your goal? So for those of you who have joined the lives or watched the recording and are live now, please do share in the chat any new liberating assumptions that might have come up for you when you have challenged the thing that you're assuming most, identified whether it's true, and then sought a new liberating assumption. What could you credibly assume instead in order to achieve your goal? I'll give you a moment to just think about that. Please do share in the chat. Brilliant one there. Thank you for sharing that. People will take me seriously. I can assume that people will take me seriously. Have you got evidence? I'm sure you've got evidence when people have taken you seriously. Thank you. Wonderful. Has anyone else got a liberating assumption? And what we can do with this new liberating assumption is, some people love mantras. So you can create a mantra, write that out, put that somewhere in your office. You can say that to yourself in the morning if that's your thing, if you find mantras help. But equally, you can hold that in your brain to say, actually, people will take me seriously. People have taken me seriously. I've got this example of when people did take me seriously, or when I got this really positive feedback when I was doing a really tricky presentation with some really important people, and I was taken seriously. So the power of this new assumption is that we are rewiring that limiting assumption. And that rewiring is the most powerful thing. And it takes a while for our brain to do that rewiring. So repetition is really important, a really important part of that process. So I'll just say welcome. It's not, welcome, April. Lovely to see you. Just say, April, we're in the presentation. It's being recorded, so do just pop yourself off video and on mute. That would be great. Thank you. So nice to see you. So we've got that people won't take me seriously. We've got no one expects me to know all the answers. Yes, that's a huge one for most of us. No one expects me to know all of the answers. And actually then you can shift to say, actually, I don't know that yet. I'm going to find that information out for you. Everything I've done before that I didn't know how to do because it was new, I've done to a high standard. Yeah, there was a point where I didn't know how to run a Zoom webinar, and now there's a point where I do that to a standard. And actually, it's interesting. I remember at the beginning of COVID, it was March the 23rd. I think it was like the day we went into lockdown, and 2 weeks before that, I was meant to be in Vienna running a workshop for people from across Europe for the Red-Nosed Clown Doctors, an amazing charity that works across Europe. And so they'd already cancelled this session by that point, because most of the countries taking part were already well into lockdown. So 2 weeks ahead of our lockdown, we prepared a pan-European Zoom training over 2 days, and there were all sorts of challenges, because number one, it was the first time I'd done breakout rooms. Number two, we were working across about 6 languages, and we had to massively pivot how we worked due to language barriers. But anyway, because I was under pressure to just get the job done, I just had to be in a growth mindset, and I just had to realize that, you know, it was all new to me, and I was just going to get on with it. And I think it's really interesting when you can see those times where you have pushed through, regardless of that, and overcome that belief that because I don't know how to do it, it doesn't mean that I won't know, or I won't learn how to do it. So thank you for that one. So with this new liberating assumption, what we could credibly assume instead, we can start to believe in and start to think about what our first step might be. So if you knew that, I'll draw on one of the examples, no one expects me to know all the answers, how would you take that first challenging step, or what first challenging step would you take? So if you knew that no one expects me to have all the answers, what would that first step be? Or insert your own liberating assumption. And then you might want to just take a little moment to explore some different options. So if you knew that people will take me seriously, how else would you take that first challenging step? What else would you do? And then that starts to take us to the third part, which is the step up, which is the action. So it's all great to sit in the reflecting. It's my favorite place to be. But if we're just sitting with a notepad and a journal, we're actually not going to get anywhere. We're going to stay pretty much stuck. So this is the exciting part. So if you feel brave enough, please do share in the chat if you knew that, and then insert your liberating assumption. How else, or what else would you do? What would your first step be if you knew that liberating assumption? So I'll just give you a moment. Please do share if you've got any thoughts around some actions. I would actually be really great at it. Yes. So what would be the first thing that you'd do? What would be, and maybe that was a liberating assumption. So knowing that you're going to be really great at it, what's the first thing that you are going to go and do? And you might see in this moment, your energy shifting, starting to shift towards, oh, actually, I could take some action here. I could do something. And what I've noticed in my life is when I do challenge that limiting assumption and I do take action, almost it's like that momentum starts and the energy starts to move. It's the doorbell again. It's Christmas. The energy starts to like build that momentum and move forward. So I could go into that situation feeling more confident about the outcome. I'd be bolder in meetings. Great. And you might want to get really specific, like what does be bolder in meetings look like for you? So that could be bolder in meetings might not be the one talking all the time. It might be saying, actually, no, I'm going to be really clear and set a boundary, or say no about something. I'd put myself forward more rather than contributing from the sidelines. I'm really, really hoping the doorbell's anyway. It's my Christmas tree. I'm waiting for my Christmas tree delivery, and it has to be signed for. So, sorry, I could put myself forward more rather than contributing from the sidelines. Wonderful. Yeah, great. So that action is to actually think about actually what could you do to put yourself forward more. So as I was thinking about this, actually these 6 sort of steps came to me. So we're finding that new liberating alternative. So the first step that we're doing is clarifying our goal. Where do we want to get to? And when we're thinking about our goals, we need to be thinking about actually what is not the goal that someone else might prescribe to us, or what other people might think is great for us. or what success might be defined as by other people. It's really clarifying what we really want, which is a whole sort of set of processes in itself. Once we know that, then we can do the work that we've just been doing around finding that new liberating alternative. And another really key part, and I'm going to share a framework in a minute, which will help you break this down, but it does require you to think about what are your values and knowing your values. So when we know our values, we can take action and really be clear about our decisions, because we are not taking action based on, like I say, what other people might think or what other people might expect, but actually really what matters to us personally. And then the next thing is actually when we feel stuck or when we want to be courageous, sometimes there is stuff that is out of our control. And a lot of the liberating assumptions may have come from experiences where we had a negative experience or we failed. But some of that might have been because of things that were out of our control. And when we set our intention to take action, it's really important that we take action on the things that we can control. And sometimes there is an act or a step around letting go of the things we can't control. So an example, so I'm living through this at the moment. This is not a work example, but it is a real life example. I hope it's useful. I am supporting my aunt who has dementia. Now, there's a lot about working with someone who is elderly and has dementia that means is out of my control. And I have had to, over the past 8 weeks, go through a massive journey of thinking about what can I control. So I can control when I choose to be available to help my aunt. So I can carve out time in my diary. I can choose what I do, as I say, what I do and when I do it. I can't control how she responds. I can't control what happens to her health. There's a lot of things I can't control. So it's a matter of sort of actually focusing on what I can control and letting go of what I can't control. The next step is really around setting clear boundaries. So what boundaries do you need to step up with courage? And what do those look like for you? And then it's about owning our power and taking that first step. So I hope that helps as a sort of like a flow really of thinking about the work that we've been doing, which is really around in that step 2. But I wanted to give a sort of a wider framework really around the questions that we've been working on in these 3 sessions to give you some clarity really in terms of how you then move forward. So what I'm going to do now, where are we for time, is I'm going to stop the recording and as a group with the live group, we're just going to have a discussion around where we've got to with those steps. Just an opportunity to ask any questions that you might have. And then I'm going to give you 8 ideas for action so that you can come away with these 8 really powerful things that you can do. Pick 1 or 2 or how many that you want that feel aligned to the action that you need to take in your life and your career. So let me just stop the recording now. So we are now going to move on to a tool or another way of framing you're thinking about how you can move towards your values or towards your goal. So this is like a 4x4 matrix where you have on the left hand, on the this way, horizontal axis, we've got the thoughts to the left hand side, what might be going on in our head internally, and then our actions. So I think they say that every action starts with a thought, so we think it first before we actually act. At the top, we've got moving towards our values and our goals. So the direction we want to travel, the action, the step up that we want to take. And then down the bottom, we've got what might move us away from my values and my goal. So we start in the top left quadrant. Like I say, we start with our thoughts. So what matters to me in this challenge? Or we were talking when we stopped recording about boundaries. What matters to me in order to set boundaries or to communicate what I want? And what values do I want to express? So we're not going to work through values here. I work through values during my Elevate programme and in some of the other content that I offer. So if you want support and resources around finding your values, please do let me know. So really leading into what matters most for you effectively is what your values are. So that could be talked about family, it could be around connection and collaboration, it could be creativity, freedom might be one of your values, whatever your values might be. And then we look at, well, this matters and these are the values I want to express. But actually, if I internalize this, what unhelpful thoughts might show up inside me that will stop me moving towards my goal. So this is where we identify those limiting assumptions. So what are my limiting assumptions that might stop me from taking action to move towards my goal? And then what I like about this model is on the bottom right, it just gives you a moment to think about, if I stay in this unhelpful place, if I stay with my limiting assumption, what might I do if I respond to those unhelpful thoughts? That could be that you do nothing, could be that you stay stuck. It could be that you try to control the situation and overact and take on too much and do too much and exhaust yourself and find yourself in overwhelm and burnout. And you can start to recognize, oh, I'm responding not to my helpful thoughts, the thoughts that my liberating assumption, but I'm responding to my limiting assumption. And that is causing me to act in a way that isn't helping me to move towards my values and my goals. But it is useful to be there, because then to be in that bottom right quadrant, because that helps you to get a lens of, before you act, it gets you to a lens of what action you might take. And you go, well, actually, I don't want to be there. I don't want to be exhausted. I don't want to be burnt out. So what could I do to move towards my goal while expressing my values? So we were talking, as I say, when in the breakout group about boundaries, and actually commitment to boundaries will be around committing to align to your values. What really matters most in this situation, and therefore that helps you to make that decision and take a step and take action that is aligned with your values. And helps you to move forward. So it's basically, this is just another layer on top of the process that we've already done around challenging our limiting assumptions. So do ask if anything comes up through doing that exercise, and I'll just give you a moment to just have a think about those 4 questions, or there's about 5 questions, and does that help clarify, therefore, then the action that you can take that will help you to move towards your goal, but while expressing your values? Because actually what we don't want to do is find someone else's action. So as a coach, my role is to help you to commit to an action that isn't my action. So what I might do in a situation might not necessarily be what you might do, because our values might be different, our decision-making process might be different. So your role is to find that action that really does align. It's like sort of being like a plumb line, being in line with your values. So any questions on that, please do share in the chat. And actually interesting seeing that there was a last point in the chat where someone said, I find having boundaries hard as I worry that people won't like me or approve of me for enforcing them. At clarifying values around connection or relationship might be interesting, like what does friendship mean to you, or what does there might be an assumption under there to uncover around what being liked or likable looks like, or what being respected looks like, for example, in the workplace. So there's lots, I'm not apologizing, there are lots of ideas for action in this session. So we've done lots of thinking. Now I've got lots of tips. So before I go on to this, I'll just check the chat. Great, I'm glad that's helpful. So as part, I shared in the middle part, the second part in Show Up, I talked about Elevate, which is my 6-month group coaching program. And that has 8 modules, and they follow what I call my live life principles. And the work that we've been doing really kind of fits within the framework of these 8 live life principles. So I've been giving you some nuggets, but obviously not the whole thing, because that will be a lot, and it's all part of my program anyway. So what I wanted to do today is share one tip or one step, one action that you can take within each of these principles. So actually, if you just took one from each of these, this one tip from each of the 8, you would start to see momentum, and you would start to see really powerful action in your life. So I'm going to share those now. Do share in the chat which really resonates for you, which you feel you are able to take right now, but also which area you feel you need to work on. So I think some people maybe might find balance or work-life balance to be an area where they're just completely, they know where they are, they're comfortable with it. Others might be really struggling and want to work with it. So, pick an area where you feel that you need to put a little bit more emphasis or effort in terms of how that can help you work towards your goal. So the first live life principle, which is my favorite, and not that I have favorites, is live life with yourself. So this is the core really of what I've been sharing through the Courage series. So this is the process by which we understand ourselves, give ourselves compassion, self-care, noticing our thoughts and emotions, and moving away from the ego that we talked about in the first session towards self-acceptance. So that is the journey that we take. It's the first module inside Elevate, but really it's something that you come back to as we've been sharing again and again and again. It's like an iterative sort of rolling process, but it's the start, because I really, really passionately believe if we are suppressing our thoughts and suppressing our emotions and relying on the ego, all the other bits are going to be really quite hard to do, because we're doing it out of external effort, not our own, not a sense of kind of really, truly believing and understanding ourselves. And that will get really, really tiring. And at some point, we're going to burn out. So that is the first step. So really just working through all the workbooks that we've just shared. So noticing your thoughts and emotions and moving towards self-acceptance. And the most simplest way that I can just describe how I live that out in my life is when I notice those thoughts and emotions, it's become so in tune that I stop, I breathe. If I feel I need to write something down, I try to take time to write that down, or at least I do it at the end of the day, and just go, it's okay, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling worried, I'm feeling guilty, I'm feeling whatever I'm feeling. It's okay. I walk in acceptance of that, and I am okay. And I've got some. Now I've uncovered all of my limiting, not nearly all, but some of them, my limiting assumptions. I've got my liberating assumptions that I can just draw on. So that's the first one. The second live life principle is live life with balance. I don't know why I put a photo of a lovely beach, which is where I went on holiday this summer. I suppose that represents holiday and balance, but actually we can't be on a beach in Italy every day. And for me, really balance is about creating balance every single day of our lives. And this was the question that came up when we stopped the recording, is what boundaries do you need to create to find balance in your life? And who can support you to stick to them? So I think we've talked a little bit about creating boundaries in terms of before you can create a really clear boundary, you need to know what you need. So doing that live life with yourself piece first, what matters most for you, and what does a boundary look like for you? So if I said, oh, you must switch your laptop off at 5 o'clock, well, actually, you might switch your laptop up at 3, pick up your kids, put them to bed, and then work from 7 till 10. Like that might be a boundary that really works for you. So, but for me, I might have a completely different boundary. It might be that you, the conversation we have around, you do love listening to people and being with other people and spending time with them, but knowing when to stop that, or what that looks like for you, is really important. So number one, understand yourself, define your boundary. I'd say don't be overly ambitious. So if you are working till midnight every night and you're suddenly saying you're going to stop at 5, that's probably like a big shift in expectations. And then find someone who can support you in holding you to account. But when you're expressing your boundaries as well, really express that boundary around the impact that it might have for that other person. So I'm not able to do that now because, and think about, what might be beneficial for them, for you to create and set that boundary. So, because I know that if I continue to work like this, I will burn out and will need to take some time off work. So it's best for all of us that this happens. So think about, what they might want, the other person might want from the situation, what you want, and try to get that kind of middle ground. So understanding other people's perspective can be helpful. So there's loads in Live Life with Balance. This is just one tip, but for me, balance is all around thinking about what you need in your life to thrive, what you need to inspire you, motivate you, give you energy in your life. So I could give you loads of examples of going out at lunch, sitting in the sunshine, drinking water, doing yoga, meditating. These are loads of ideas that we all know about, but really interrogating your own balance and what your own balance looks like for you is really important. Another thing to think about is if you are an introvert or an extrovert, how your balance around energy around being with people or not with people is working for you. And I think now we've got that flexibility with home working, you can start to think, well, actually I do need to be with people, so I do need to be in the office for 1 or 2 days a week, or actually I don't need to be with people, so I'm not going to be in the office. So that's Live Life with Balance. Really, really powerful. Again, it's like an ongoing life process, because I do believe that our balance changes as our life circumstances change, as our needs change, as our work and home lives evolve as well. The next module inside Elevate is called Live Life on Purpose, and this is all around intention, integrity. It's not we've got one on integrity. It's all around intention, clarifying our goals, and being really purposeful about how we show up. And so to sum that up, I've got a shift for you, and that is, who do you want to be, or how do I want to show up today? So often when we prepare for meetings, you might be thinking about, I've got to have all the knowledge, I've got to have all the facts, I've got to do the beautiful slide deck, I've got to be completely prepared. And we don't spend any time thinking about who do we want to be. So how do I want to show up? Do I want to be calm? Do I want to have authority? Do I want to be empowering? in the way that I show up in that meeting? Do I want to have empathy? Who do I want to be in order to achieve my goal? Not what do I have to do, or how much do I need to know, or what other limiting assumption that you might have. So really encouraging you, particularly if you have got a challenging meeting or difficult conversations, obviously focus on what you need to say, but before you do that, think about your behaviors, the behaviors that will build trust, the behaviors that will help you to have an impact, and really show up and step up with courage. Just check the chat. Okay. So that is live life on purpose. So if you've got that challenging meeting coming up, the question you can ask yourself is, who do you want to be? How do I want to show up today? Then, and this is the integrity piece, the next module is called Live Life with Integrity. So this is all around doing what you say you will do. So I think we trip ourselves up when we are people, when we try to please people and we say we'll do everything, and then of course we are not able to do everything, so we don't keep our commitments. And I think building trust is about keeping your commitments to yourself first. Because actually, if we are draining ourselves by keeping our commitments to everybody else, we are really letting ourselves down, but ultimately we're going to let everyone else down at some point in time. And actually, we won't let people down because people understand, but really focusing on keeping the commitments to yourself first. And again, we've got another top tip, is another module is Live Life with Others. Who can you find who can help you to hold you to account to those commitments to yourself, not commitments to everybody else in the whole wide world, but the commitments to you. No worries, don't worry, Sean. Nice to see you. The next module is Live Life Abundantly. So in this module inside Elevate, we will talk much more broadly about abundance, about maybe our limiting beliefs around money, around success, around what success and abundance actually looks like in truth for us, what society might say the trappings for success are versus what we really want and need and matter for us in terms of success. And the most powerful step to abundance and growth in abundance in all sorts of areas of our life. So that could be money, that could be love, that could be friendship, it could be opportunities, whatever that is to be grateful every day. And actually, this is a photo of my dining room table. And I am often grateful for my dining room table. So a lovely couple who are very important in my life when I just started my career, they moved abroad with their 3 young children, and just as my husband and I were getting married, and they gave us their dining room table, which we still have and we've used. It's fitted perfectly in every house we've owned or house we've lived in. And actually, I'm really grateful for my dining room table. I worked at it in that spot for for 5 years. I now we've moved house and I now have an actual room to work in. So I am grateful for my dining room table. I know that sounds really ridiculous, but that means a lot to me. The relationship, the laughs, the connection, the friendships, the family that I brought up around that table means everything. I actually feel quite emotional. So actually taking some time to really be grateful for something that might feel really mundane, didn't spend a penny on it. It's one of those wonderful, it looks very smart and wooden, but you put a cup down and it doesn't make a mark. It's wonderful, wonderful dining room table. So sorry, sounds like a really trite example, but and a lovely portrait. That is my grandmother. There we are. Thank you. So yes, grateful for family and tulips and everything else. So gratitude, really, really important step that we can take. Then courage. So obviously we've been, the whole theme of these 3 sessions has been courage. So inside Elevate, we do talk a little bit more around specifically around courage in terms of actually some really practical tips around speaking up, presenting publicly. I think I shared that I used to be absolutely terrified of speaking in public, and now there's photographic evidence of me speaking in public. So some really top tips here, just particularly if you find it hard to speak up and get yourself heard in meetings, is to ground yourself. So by that I mean put your feet both flat on the ground, to breathe deeply. You could do that breathing exercise we did in the first session in terms of identifying where we are holding that stress or that anxiety, and expanding that, or just thinking about when you feel like your voice is going a bit higher, slowing yourself down and taking a breath in. And then ask what one thing. So really most powerful thing that I've heard around particularly speaking up in meetings, we might go into a meeting and we've got a million of things that we could say, or what I hear when I work with people is they are trying to keep up with the conversation and think, when am I next going to speak? When's my opportunity to jump in? And it doesn't mean you don't need to speak in every meeting, or you don't need to speak to every point. But I think if you arrive at that meeting with some sense of a knowledge about what is the one thing that you want to get across, and even if you say that 3 or 4 times in slightly different ways, you will have more impact than saying 3 or 4 random, not so prepared things. So courage to speak up, really, for me, it's worked for me anyway, comes from really simplifying your message right down to what one thing do you need to say to help you to speak up. Do share any of these tips that might be working for you, or if you've tried any of these tips, please do share. And then the next module is called Live Life with Others, and connection, collaboration, support, challenge, relationships that are integral to your success in your career. You're either going to be working with people, most likely, or you're working with people in teams. You're probably going to have to lead people at some point. So I really like to think about, actually, particularly if you're leading others, who do you have in your support network leading you? So particularly as you get more senior in organizations, your boss isn't necessarily going to be your challenger, coach, mentor, cheerleader, networker, provide you accountability or information. They're probably the CEO or a senior director. And with the best will in the world, they can't hold your hand anymore. And one of the things that you can do as you step up is to think, actually, who do I need in my support network? My personal boardroom is another way of thinking about it. And that could be 1 or 2 people, but it's probably better if it comes from a number of people, so that if that one person drops out of your life for whatever reason, you haven't lost your support network. So who do you need in your life right now? So as I say, it could be a challenger, someone who says, come on, like, I really think you should just go for that job, that you're way qualified for it, you are brilliant, why aren't you applying? Get on with it, just buck up and go and do it. It might be a coach is a better approach. Oh, I like that line. Someone to say, what one step could you take? What are you thinking? And work through some of the questions that I have supported you with over the past 3 sessions. It might be a mentor, so that would be someone with more knowledge and experience than you in the particular area that you work in. Might be a cheerleader, someone who says, oh, have you heard of Emily? She's amazing, join, I'll connect you with her, etc. That links to a networker. So there are people, if you imagine that kind of, that diagram where people have got, we're all like little faces and we've all got connections. There are some people who are like natural networkers. They have this huge network of a kind of wider group of people, and if you know them, they are really helpful to open doors for you and make connections. They're the person who goes, oh, I know someone who runs a podcast. They could they could help you do X, Y, and Z. So do you have that person in your life? Who is holding you to account? Who's providing you with information and knowledge to help you learn and grow? So just a little bit of an exercise really to think about where are the gaps in your life, and really as we step up with courage, part of that is about being really and does take some courage to ask someone, would you be my coach, would you be my mentor? Or it might take some courage to invest in some of these things. So coaching typically is a chargeable service. Mentors often offer that for free, although you can get paid mentoring, and then you've got kind of wider friendship groups, etc. So there's lots of ways that you can find your support network, but really intentionally stepping into that is really, really powerful. And I certainly find that when I step out and make new connections, I find it really energizing, and although I'm an introvert, I know therefore that's the first thing that goes. So stepping out, meeting new people, getting inspired by other people really helps motivate me. Live life with courage. And then the final thing is to really be thinking about action planning. So always on a rolling basis, thinking about where am I going? What's my long-term goal? Where am I heading? And what does that mean for the first step that I need to take? And I think often what we do is we shrink back particularly when we get stuck, we forget, like almost like it's the blinkers come on and we forget where we're heading. And therefore we feel a bit paralyzed about what that first action is. And my top tip here is to be a mindful goal setter. So start with the future focus, to think about, where am I heading? What does the future look like? But also to balance the present. So sometimes we're naturally future focused people, or we might be overly present focused. And if we're mindful, we are sitting in the middle of those two states. So we're aware of the future, but we're aware of the actions that we can take now. And that's when you can go back to that grid that I shared and ask those questions, because that will help you to take the first step to step up. So those are the 8 steps. They're all in the workbook. So if I rush through that, I'm really sorry, but all the steps are in the workbook. If you do want an opportunity to work with me further, and if you could imagine what it would be like if you were not afraid, I have opened the doors to my Elevate program, which is a 6-month group coaching program. So Courage is Fear Walking. The doors are open. The early bird rate closes next Friday, the 15th. So if you want an opportunity to put all of this into action, to find direction and clarity so that you can take the next step in your career, to overcome your career or work challenges, to build resilience, to find your strengths so that you can design a career that you love and live it, then this is an opportunity for you. And this was the slides that I didn't share yesterday. Elevate is unique. So it's a mixture of online learnings. There are pre-recorded videos that I have uploaded on all of those 8 modules. You get access to those for 12 months. They're videos, bite-sized videos and workbooks. You will be part of a group of amazing women. I can promise you they will be amazing, because they always have been. It's reflective, but also it's about action. And together we will every week challenge your limiting assumptions and help you find answers. Excuse me, I just need to blow my nose. the answers that you need to make progress, whether that's small things, whether that's speaking up in a meeting or a really big life decision. So it's 6 months. We run from the first Monday in January to the end of June. We meet every Monday at 1 o'clock for 90 minutes. And that is each month we have a strategy session where we delve deeper into the content. But every week, basically, as part of that weekly session, you get a chance to be coached. You get support. Every single week, you get that accountability. You also get a one-to-one coaching session with me, and we have a WhatsApp group, so you can, anything you want to bring at any time. I'm in there from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock on a weekday. You can pop in at the weekends, but I'll respond at the beginning of the week. So you've basically got support during the weekdays from me. Others people might respond outside office hours as well. So just want to offer that to you, really, if you feel that is something that might be helpful for you, or you might know that there's someone in your team who needs this support. It costs £120 a month if you pay monthly, or £690 if you pay at once. I'd really encourage you to think about asking for support from your organisation. Your organisation needs to be investing in you and your growth. So if it is something you're interested in and a bit nervous about asking support, just message me, and I can talk about how I can support you with that, so that you can thrive. And then just very quickly, just to share, I shared last time about some of the barriers that you might face. I think time and money probably is the biggest. But as I reflected last time, particularly the women in the group that I'm currently running, they really reflected that they're so grateful that they have committed time to themselves. And the impact that you'll see is almost like, I suppose, like I said last time, I'm not going to promise that you're like going to get a new job by June next year, but what I can promise is that every day you'll be taking small steps, and it's like those little changes that compound to something really fundamental and huge. And will I get on with everyone? As I said, the groups that I've formed so far have just been the groups of most amazing, empathetic, supportive women, maybe for different life circumstances, different experiences. That is part of the value. I come with my perspective, my knowledge and my experience. What I love is bringing other people together and the power of that. Got a lovely quote from April, who's on the call. I'm assuming it's you, April. Here, so she can testify. She has been part of my Elevate programme and part of my leadership programme and other programmes, just to prove that other amazing women have joined the programme and found it to be impactful on their journeys through their life and through their career, through running their own business, through being in senior roles in organisations. Ooh, that is weird. I've gone all the way to the beginning on my PowerPoint. There we are. Sorry, everyone. Give me a chance to breathe. Some more case studies there as well. April's given me a big smiley face. Thanks, April. So I offer a money back guarantee if you feel that you're a bit nervous about it, if after 1 month you don't see a change, or you just don't align with the group or don't align with my vibes. No questions asked. So just to close, just to say a huge thank you for trusting me over these 3 sessions. Thank you for those who, like Honesty, shared in the chat and shared in the breakout sessions. I really appreciate your honesty in doing that. And if you have any questions or need any support really from me in terms of resources, I've got loads and loads of resources over on YouTube, on Instagram, and that's it. I'm on LinkedIn as well. So any questions, resources, support, both for you in terms of coaching or Elevate or your personal growth, or for your teams. I love working with teams and seeing them grow and having these sorts of conversations in a team context. Then please do let me know. So thank you for your time, and please do keep in touch. Thank you, everyone.